Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca, and today we are doing a fourth installment of my series, Plant Funeral. It's kind of like the Spotify recap, except not as fun. So it has been another year of owning plants. This is my fourth year doing this, and we have some deaths to report. Unfortunately, you know, every year I've got a few. I would say though, every year I think that I have less, which is exciting because it means that I'm like kind of getting it. So normally in these videos, I go through a list of plants that I have killed over the year, plants that I've killed either from neglect, from didn't like me, they chose not to live any longer, or plants that I just abandoned. And also, since I don't have that many this year, I asked you guys for entries to help me out, and basically I'm going to do an address to remember your plants as well. So thank you to everybody who participated in this video. We will do that right after we honor my plants. So let's get started with the first one, which is the Monstera celtipicana. Now this plant was very kindly gifted to me by one of my plant friends, and upon arrival, it wasn't super happy. It was really cold, and I think it really was affected by the weather, but I did my very best to bring it back, and I did very successfully. But at the end of the day, it did not make it. And I basically when it was in this point, like 2 leaves left, I brought it to a plant swap, and I had very little confidence that it would make it. Although maybe it did, but I'm gonna consider this a plant that I abandoned because honestly, I was sick of it taking space up in my greenhouse cabinet. It was like 2 leaves and it was just doing nothing. It was giving me nothing. So I abandoned it and brought it to a plant swap, and somebody was really looking for a Monstera celtipicana. I have no idea if it survived, but honestly, I didn't think that it would survive much longer in my care. And of course, I let the person know who traded with me. I don't even think I traded for it. I think I just gave it to them. I let them know that it's been on a downward spiral and I was just done with it. So don't worry, they definitely knew before they got the plant that it was, in questionable condition. Pest-free though, so that's good. The next plant that did not make it this year is my Calathea white star. I know, it's so typical of me to kill a Calathea. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, here's what happened. This is another one that I kind of abandoned, but it was going downhill so bad. So basically, Calathea are like spider mite magnets, and if you're at all familiar with my channel, you know that spider mites are just something that I deal with often. So I am just hesitant when I find a plant with spider mites and it feels like I'm not going to be able to get it under control. At this point in my plant life, plant career seems weird. I do not fight for plants that are not going to fight for me. I'm just gonna be honest, I don't. And this plant got spider mites like 3 separate times, and I did literally everything that I could. I used harsh chemicals and I scrubbed those leaves. I repotted it. I did everything that I could, but it still kept getting spider mites. So the spider mites found somebody vulnerable and really captivated on that. Yeah, I think that's the right word. And it did not end well for my plant. Let's just say that. Did it end up in the trash? Yes, it did. When you deal with spider mites, you really are playing with fire because you could just eliminate the source, find the, what is the thing from 21 Jump Street? Find the dealer, infiltrate the supply.
Infiltrate the dealers, find the supply.
That's how I feel about spider mites, okay? So if you have one plant that is just constantly bringing in the spider mites, maybe throw it away. Or put it in a bag, separate it from everybody, quarantine it so that it can't infect anybody else. But basically all the plants around it, even though they were not touching, were getting spider mites. And I don't really know how that happens. I don't know if spider mites can jump. I don't know if they crawled across the pot onto the counter and then up the other pot. I honestly have no idea. But all the plants around that kept getting spider mites. And as soon as I threw it away, the spider mites went away. Okay, the next 2 plants, I'm really actually sad to be reporting these ones because it's entirely my fault. So this winter, I had my plants outside for quite a while, into late fall, early winter for us. So it was getting down into like 25-ish. And then I finally brought in my cacti and euphorbia. And I should have brought them in way sooner because I have my cacti and euphorbia sort of potted together in those long planters, as you've seen on my channel before. Cacti can handle the low temperatures as long as they're covered. All of my cactus were outside in like 20 degrees and they were fine, but it's the euphorbia that really were not fine. So cacti and euphorbia are not the same thing, and they often get lumped together care-wise, but euphorbia is a lot more sensitive in my experience, and in a lot of people's experience, I know. As long as they were covered, I thought that it would be fine. But then I uncovered them when I was ready to bring them in, and I saw that pretty much all my euphorbia was dead. Like bad. Soft, falling over. I still need to like sort that out and pick out what's alive and what's dead and see if there's any parts of the plants that I can save. But thankfully, cactus is the thing that I like the most. So all my cacti is fine. Some euphorbias will need to be replaced. Maybe on the next time I travel to Tucson, I'll go to plants from the Southwest, or plants something of the Southwest. It's one of my favorite cactus nurseries. But anyway, I'm gonna have to go back there. Plants for the Southwest, I think is what it's called. Anyway, I'm gonna have to go back there and restock some stuff. Okay, so I lost my crested euphorbia, and then I also lost one of my white ghost euphorbia, which is really sad because that one was one of the first white ghosts I got, and it was really big. Like it grew from like maybe this big. It was one I got in California, and when it died, it was probably like, I mean, I can't even get it fully in the shop, but maybe like 2 feet tall. So that's really sucks. You know, I was really hoping to have that one and like grow it to be as tall as my other one, which is just over there actually right now. Moving on, the next plant that I killed is a Scindapsus moonlight. Scindapsus trubii moonlight. And listen, small Scindapsus just don't do well for me. I don't really know what it is. I find them in my care to be a little bit slower growers, and honestly it's probably just because I'm not giving them like exactly what they want. But I have had an exotica for as long as I've had houseplants, and it's been great. It's been an amazing grower for me. But every other type of Scindapsus I've tried to grow, like just the regular Pictus, the Scindapsus moonlight, I had a dark form for a moment, they've all died on me. And I did recently purchase a larger pot of Scindapsus moonlight and also a larger pot of Scindapsus pictus. So let's hope that I have better luck with those ones, since it is like a bigger pot, a more mature plant, a little bit more like robust. I hope that that will help it be, I don't know, not a huge fail. So anyway, I did have a small cutting that I got from a friend, and it was really cute for a while, and then I neglected it really bad. Well, first of all, it got like a sunburn because my grow light fell on it and I didn't notice for a few days, and it got burnt really bad. So like there's a leaf gone, and then you got just the general neglect, and then the rest of the leaves just passed away.
Well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions.
So that one I probably could have saved if I was paying attention, but honestly I wasn't. I think it died in a point where I was like not doing great mentally, and I just like really didn't have the capacity to take care of my plants past the basic bare necessities, and it just needed more from me and I couldn't offer it. So that's okay, these things happen. It's an easily replaceable plant now, thankfully, and I was able to get another one much bigger for like 30 bucks, or maybe it was $25. So that's really good. And the last plant that I have to report today, and let me say, I'm sure that there's been more, but these are the only ones that I really remember, like the memorable ones. So if I'm remembering these ones, then you probably will too. And if there's any beyond that, I don't know if either of us will remember, but if you think of anything, let me know. But I had a pot of Photonia. It was really, really cute. It was like a little, what is that called? Like a little compact pot of Photonia. It was one of my more favorite Photonias I've had, and it passed away as well. I think I went on vacation and it just didn't make it or something. I don't really remember how it died. I think that I forgot about it for a while or something, and it completely died back. And I used it sort of as an experiment to like learn how Photonia grow back, because lots of people have told me, oh, if you kill a Photonia, just cut it all back and it will come back for you. So I wanted to try that out, and I cut it all back and it did grow back. So I think most of the time when we think Photonia is dead, it's not actually. We just need to like wait it out a little bit and let it just grow back, because Photonia is actually pretty hardy, I'm not gonna lie. I know that a lot of people love to hate on Fittonia, but I will never hate on Fittonia. I love it so much. Even if Fittonia show up in literally every plant funeral video, I will continue to buy them and kill them probably. But the one that I have now, it's a really big plant and I've had it for quite a while. I mean, watch it die now that I've said that, but I feel like I've sort of figured out Fittonia, like watering it at the very first sign of it being thirsty has made mine really beautiful and full. And something that's really wild is Fittonia, I think, is usually advertised as a low light plant, but I put mine in a south window and it grew flat like this, like just like a table. It was crazy. I mean, I've never seen a Fittonia grow like that, but after I saw them in the botanical gardens at the Missouri Botanical Gardens in the Climatron, I saw it growing just as ground cover. And I think that's insanely cool. So I wanted to see what would happen if I gave it like a ton of light and it didn't have to stretch. And it grew like ground cover in a pot. It was so cool. So I would highly suggest getting a Fittonia and just experimenting with it because it's just one of the coolest plants ever. I know that everybody hates on Fittonia, but it's beautiful as like a ground cover type of plant. It's beautiful as a hanging plant. I saw it recently as a hanging plant at Flower Farm and it's beautiful. So anyway, I will sing the Fittonia's phrases until the day that I die. And I know that I'm gonna get so many people being like, you're crazy. But it's just an amazing plant. I love it so much. So anyway, those are my plants that did not make it this year. Each year I do these, I notice that I lose less plants. And I think it really is because with time comes experience and understanding your plants, and also with time comes less heartbreak when you do kill something because it's like, okay, well, I learned something. I think a lot of the times we can look at our plants like, oh, well, it's worth this much, so I need to like take care of it and make sure that I'm like doing everything I can to make sure it's happy and alive. And I totally agree with that. But at the same time, I've started to look at buying each of my plants as sort of like an experience. And so if I lose, let's say, a really expensive plant, that's gonna be really sad for me. But at the same time, I learned something and I lived a little bit of life with that plant. And to me, that feels valuable enough. So basically when we buy a new plant, and maybe it's a little bit of more of a challenging plant, we're buying a plant lesson. We're buying a teacher. And I think it's so cool to look at our plants as teachers because it's really difficult to like get all of the answers from them, but they will slowly give you like nuggets of information to help you solve the puzzle that is taking care of this plant and keeping it happy. Like when I was a teacher, I didn't just give all of the answers to my students. I would sort of let them figure it out on their own with guidance, like sort of like give them tips and make sure they don't like drown, but also encourage them to try to figure things out on their own. And that's what I really want to do for you guys as well. You know, I think that it's really important that, of course, we're going to listen to YouTubers, we're going to watch videos on how to take care of certain plants, but I think what's even more valuable is just actually looking at your plant and seeing what it needs, looking at the leaves and thinking about what this means about the plant, what the plant needs based on what it's showing me through the leaves, through the stems, all of these things. Plants really are the best teachers and they really are the ones that will tell you what they want and what they need with their care. So I can make so many care videos, but really the best teacher is going to be your plant. And I just really want to encourage like looking at our plants and engaging with our plants and seeing them as teachers, seeing them as friends, seeing them as experiences rather than just an object that we purchased and need to succeed and thrive and survive. Because that's not always going to happen. And I think that if we look at it more as like a lesson, it'll hurt a lot less when we do kill something. So anyway, that is all for my section of the video. So now I want to read your guys' entries for your plant funeral. We're going to honor some of your plants and hear a little bit more about your guys' plant journey. Let's get started with that. All right, we're first going to look at my email. So this first one is from Shayla. So they say, my Dracaena marginata randomly kicked the bucket this fall. I'd had it for nearly 2 years and had no issues with it. Then it randomly shriveled up and died. It just happens. I don't know why, but sometimes plants just are like, bye. There were 2 plants in the pot and the one picture died first. I tried to save the other one, but it also shriveled up within a couple of weeks. The roots look healthy and I hadn't changed my routine, so maybe a pest got it, but I couldn't find pests either. It's so frustrating. Love your videos and appreciate you. Shayla, I have been there. And I have no idea why plants just do that sometimes, but they do. And I think that is just something that we need to accept as plant people. And it's a hard realization. It's a hard truth to swallow that sometimes plants just die. But thank you for your submission, Shayla. Okay, we've got one from Courtney. We've got a calathea here. Okay. Here's a before photo. We had to move with 2 children. The poor babe got set on a counter in a cold room, and then a box was set in front of her. A week later, I realized that she was missing. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this photo says she didn't like the cold laundry room and being forgotten in the dark. I trimmed off about 12 dead leaves. Yesterday when watering, I noticed 2 new leaves coming. Okay, so this is a redemption story. That's really exciting. I feel like, again, like maybe plants are not as dead as we think they are. Well, being dead is like being dead. They can't be like half dead. So I think that's something that we say a lot and it's like not actually correct. So I think a lot of the time plants that we think are dead are not actually. And I think this is one of those situations where just persevering through this like really horrible scene brought a new plant and well, not a new plant, but like a renewed plant. That's really exciting for you, Courtney. Okay, we're gonna pop over to my Instagram. I got some Instagram DMs. This one is from Alice. Okay, so they say, this is my latest plant funeral to be had. My beautiful Fittonia went through it this year. She was dropped, overwatered, and had spider mites. I cannot imagine having spider mites on a Fittonia. Like, the leaves are so small. She survived it all except for the neglect. This past week, between COVID cases and studying for exams, I kind of forgot about most of my plants, and I feel awful about it, but most survived. That's okay, life happens. My Fittonia didn't, and I knew she was a dramatic one, but I always managed to water it on time when I saw it drooping. This time she didn't want to come back. My room is quite dry because of the constant air conditioning. It's hot here, and the lack of humidity didn't help. Anyway, the other day I looked at it after watering the day before, and there was maybe 6 leaves alive. I'll chop them up and propagate, but the bushy plant is gone. Fittonia are so funny when they're like not doing well because they literally look like the most pathetic plant in the world. So thank you, Alice, for your submission, and I totally understand it. Fittonia, it happens. I feel like there has to be a Fittonia that dies every single year, and just get a new one. Just toss the whole thing. Okay, so we have a submission from Jen. My contribution to dying plants. Backstory, a calathea don't know how to say that, meets spider mites, and love-hate story. Do you see the naive hope in my eyes of cutting it back and saving it? I'm here to say that 100% did not happen. I even gave it a pothos friend to keep it company. And I think that is the funniest thing ever. A pothos friend for the dying calathea. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, I was expecting a lot of calatheas in here. Okay, this is from my friend Allie. You guys probably know her from YouTube. She says, I killed my Billy. It didn't even last a full month. It got terrible rot out of nowhere, maybe had some before I even got it, and it was one of my top 3 most expensive plants. I'm surprised I even had this photo because I tried to delete it from my phone and my memory. Oh my gosh. So my thoughts on this is, when you spend a lot of money on a plant, it hurts extra. And I know that I was saying like all that stuff about, you know, when you buy a plant and it doesn't live, like we don't need to feel that horrible about it because it was an experience. But something like this is just like really sad and really hurts because like Allie didn't have the plant for very long, and clearly the issues like were not her fault. Like if you get a plant and it has root rot, that's not your fault. And root rot takes a little bit of time to set in. Like, I really don't believe that root rot will set in like 2 days of shipping. I think that if there's a root rot problem when you get the plant, it's kind of been there for a little bit. But that's just my personal opinion. Maybe somebody else would think differently, but yeah, I would definitely be super sad about this too. Like, even though, you know, you got the experience, but it's a beautiful plant. And I'm just really sorry that happened, Allie. So I don't really have a photo because this happened so long ago, but I got this ivy plant, and even though I knew that they're like the biggest spider mite magnets ever, I just chose to ignore that because ignorance is bliss and I wanted a cool plant. It did sort of well for about a month or 2. Then it started losing a few leaves and I'm like, it's not getting enough light. So I moved it to my bigger plant shelf. It was in a shelf with no plants. I tell my friend about it and they're like, check for spider mites. And I ignore them because, again, ignorance is bliss. Freaking relatable. I did that for a very long time before I discovered my entire collection had spider mites.
Hey, I have a problem.
A few days later, I checked for spider mites, and indeed it's like infested, and I mean it. I suddenly start panicking and like take it out of that shelf. Luckily, only my ficus got spider mites, but I was able to eradicate them and still have it to this day. My first instinct is to put it in the shower and look up some anti-plant pest home remedies, and I spray the plant and it literally falls apart. I chopped it all up into a few cuttings and put them in water and hoped for the best. Long story short, not even one survived and they all just withered away. So yeah, please don't be like me. Don't ignore the pests. Yeah, don't ignore the pests because they will just multiply and get all over everything else. I'm really shocked that it only got on the ficus because in my experience, I was not that lucky. They went on my entire collection. Here's one from another friend, Joey. My first queen anthurium died because it got left in the car in a snowstorm because I was moving home from college. I take all my plants to college with me and we had to go to the ER, so my plants just sat in a blizzard for a day in freezing temperatures. Everything survived except this old girl. And there's a photo. Oh my gosh, that is so sad. Oh my gosh, I cannot imagine, but I'm honestly shocked that all of the other plants made it except for this one. Like, I feel like all of them would have died, so that's super lucky. I'm really glad that only one of them passed. Okay, so I think the most traumatic plant death for me was this cactus. It was gorgeous, started blooming, and I was in love with the big, beautiful flowers. So we've got some beautiful pictures. These flowers are so beautiful. 2 days after I took this photo, it was dead because I watered it without looking at the forecast. It was 35 degrees Celsius, 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and it rotted. I cut off all the mushy stuff and placed the green ones in some soil and waited. This is her now. Little roots are coming out 6 months later. See, in a situation like this, I would just like throw it away. So kudos to you for trying to bring it back because I don't think that I would have done that. I think I would have just like given up and been like, oh well. So that's amazing. Here we go. Bought this cutie from someone off Facebook. Wasn't told that it was unrooted until I drove 45 minutes to pick it up. That's a whole story in itself. Oh my gosh, bad seller. They should always say if it's unrooted. It's not as big of a deal if it's like a cactus or a euphorbia, but you should definitely let them know, obviously, if it's unrooted so they know like how to treat it. I let it sit in a fairly bright window, and once it was a little wrinkled, I gave it a small amount of water, did not drench it by any means, and the next day it was deceased. I still dream about what could have been. Oh my gosh, that's so sad. I'm so sorry, Christine. Oh, this one's really funny. I got this one out of the trash can for you, Becca. Can you guess what it is? It's my oh so very dead Peperomia obtusifolia. I did not know that draft would do this to it. Lesson learned. Oh my gosh, yeah, drafts are not good for plants. Like, that's just so wild that that happened. I cannot believe that. I mean, I can believe it, but it's just like, I feel like stuff like this is still shocking every time it happens. Okay, crystallinum something. This is from my friend Rebecca. She's not totally dead yet, but just completely defoliated. This was probably my most expensive plant I own. It was a gift from a friend and it's just starting declining, lost its leaves, and now it's a stump. I'm hoping it will come back since the roots and stumps are still green. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this was before. Yeah, that's a beautiful plant. And after, it looks like there's like nothing in there. All right, you guys, that's going to be all for this plant funeral episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like more plant funeral content, I will have all the videos from like previous years linked down below. But this is the first year that I've had you guys participate, and I found this to be really fun and like lethargic, I guess, to hear about your guys' plant deaths because it makes me feel a little bit less alone in my journey of still figuring out houseplants. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one for the last video of 2020. Oh, sorry. I will see you guys in the next one for the last video of 2021. Bye.